Long ago, in the mists of medieval England, a single year would decide the fate of a kingdom. This is the story of 1066, a year of rival kings, of betrayal and of war. It was a time when one crown was claimed, contested, and ultimately conquered, when the clash of swords shaped centuries to come. Tonight, let your mind drift back nearly 1,000 years. Close your eyes, let the noise of the present fade, and allow yourself to hear the quiet footsteps of history. In the year 1066, England stood at a crossroads. The death of King Edward the Confessor, a monarch with no direct heir, triggered a series of events that would culminate in one of the most pivotal battles in English history. Edward had ruled for over 2 decades. Deeply religious and politically cautious, he left no children, and his passing in January of 1066 left the throne of England open to contention. Several powerful men saw an opportunity to stake their claim. The first was Harold Godwinson, Earl of Wessex, the most powerful noble in England and brother-in-law to the late king. On January 6, 1066, just one day after Edward's death, Harold was crowned king by the Anglo-Saxon nobility. Many saw this as a natural and stable choice. Harold had defended England's borders, managed internal politics, and held the confidence of the Witan, the royal council. But across the English Channel in Normandy, Duke William was preparing a different version of the story. William of Normandy claimed that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier. Norman chroniclers insisted that Harold himself had sworn an oath on holy relics to support William's claim. To them, Harold's coronation was a betrayal. William began to prepare for war. Further north, a third challenger emerged, Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway. He argued that a prior agreement between his predecessor and the Danish King of England entitled him to the throne. He joined forces with Tostig, Harold Godwinson's exiled brother. Together, they planned an invasion of the English north. In September 1066, while William was still gathering his fleet, Hardrada and Tostig launched their attack. They landed in Yorkshire and quickly defeated local English forces at the Battle of Fulford, just outside York. The north was momentarily in their hands. Harold Godwinson acted quickly, marching his army more than 180 miles north in just 4 days. He surprised the Norwegians near Stamford Bridge on September 25th. In a brutal, decisive battle, Hardrada was killed, as was Tostig. The Norwegian army was crushed, and only a small number of ships returned home. But Harold's celebration was short-lived. Just 3 days later, on September 28th, William of Normandy landed in the south of England, at Pevensey Bay. He brought with him a large mixed army, somewhere between 7,000 and 12,000 men, composed of Norman knights, Breton and Flemish infantry, archers and crossbowmen. He began fortifying his position immediately, constructing a wooden castle and raiding the surrounding countryside to provoke Harold into battle. Exhausted from the northern campaign, Harold nonetheless marched his army south once again. He gathered fresh troops along the way, but was unable to match the full strength of his earlier force. Still, he hoped to repel William before the invader could gain a stronger foothold. On October 13th, Harold reached a ridge near the town of Hastings. There, he positioned his army on the high ground of what is now known as Senlac Hill. His men formed a dense shield wall, a tactic that had served the Anglo-Saxons well in previous battles. The core of his force was made up of experienced housecarls, well-armed and disciplined soldiers, supported by less trained fyrd levies from the surrounding shires. William advanced to meet him. On the morning of October 14th, 1066, both armies prepared for battle. William's force was organized into 3 sections: Bretons on the left, Normans in the center, and Flemish troops on the right. Archers and crossbowmen stood at the front, with infantry behind, and cavalry waiting as the final wave. The battle began around 9 in the morning. Norman archers fired volleys uphill toward the English line, but the shield wall absorbed the missiles. Then came the infantry assault. They charged up the hill, but the English held firm. Each time the Normans tried to break the shield wall, they were pushed back with heavy losses. William's cavalry surged forward, but the terrain worked against them. The steep incline blunted their momentum, and again the English held the line. Midday approached and the battlefield was littered with the dead. Both sides had suffered losses, but neither could claim victory. Then came a turning point. During one assault on the English line, the Bretons on William's left wing broke and began to retreat down the hill. Some of the English, seeing their enemy flee, broke ranks and pursued them. This retreat may have been real or a clever ruse. Regardless, Norman cavalry circled back and attacked the pursuing English from the flanks, cutting them down. Seeing the success of this maneuver, William ordered further feigned retreats. Each time, groups of English soldiers were drawn away from the main line and slaughtered. As the day wore on, the shield wall began to fragment. Toward evening, William launched one final full assault on the English position. According to later tradition, an arrow struck Harold in the eye, killing him. Other sources claim he was hacked down by Norman knights. Either way, the death of Harold marked the collapse of the English defense. Leaderless and surrounded, the remaining Anglo-Saxon soldiers were overwhelmed. The battle was lost. The Normans held the field as night fell. Harold's body was identified and, depending on which source you believe, buried under a cairn by William's orders or taken to Waltham Abbey for a Christian burial. His brothers had also died in the battle. The English nobility were in shock. With no immediate leader, some rallied behind Edgar Atheling, a teenage descendant of the royal line, but he lacked support and military strength. William began his march toward London. He met sporadic resistance but secured the capital by late December. On Christmas Day, 1066, William was crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey. The victory at Hastings was not just a military triumph, it marked the beginning of a new era. Norman rule brought sweeping changes. The native English elite were replaced by Norman lords. French became the language of the court, law and aristocracy. Castles sprang up across the land, symbols of control and dominance. And so the sun set on the fields of Hastings. A king had fallen, a kingdom had changed hands, and the course of English history had quietly, permanently shifted. What began as a struggle for a crown ended as the birth of a new world, one shaped by the ambitions of men, the weight of oaths, and the silence left by those who never returned home. Thank you for listening. Sleep well.